December 7th, 1944. 2:47 p.m. Philippines. Staff Sergeant Robert Bobby Milliken, 23 years old, crouches behind a disabled M3 half-track somewhere in the jungle outside Ormoc. The thermometer reads 94 degrees. Sweat streams down his face, mixing with gun oil and dirt. Above him, the distinctive buzz-saw sound of a Mitsubishi Ki-43. Oscar fighter grows louder, then another, then three more. 5 Japanese aircraft, coming in low, maybe 200 feet. His crew scrambles, the standard .50 caliber machine gun on their half-track, already inadequate, jammed 30 seconds ago. Bobby watches the first Oscar line up for a strafing run. He can see the pilot's goggles, can see the 12.7mm machine guns in the wings. Knows that, in approximately 8 seconds, those guns will tear through his position, through his men, through everything. He dives for cover as the Oscar opens fire. This is how American forces died in the Pacific. Helpless, outgunned in the air. Their ground vehicles carrying pop guns against an enemy that owned the sky. But 400 miles north, something new just rolled off a conversion line in Manila. Something the Japanese would learn to fear more than anything else on the ground. Something they'd whisper about in pilot briefings. Their word filtering through intelligence reports. Sky Reaper. The Pacific Theater had an aircraft problem, and it was killing Allied troops by the hundreds. By late 1943, the United States had achieved something remarkable in the Pacific. They'd matched Japanese air superiority over most operational areas. American fighters could hold their own. American bombers struck deep into enemy territory. But there was a gap, a deadly, exploitable gap that Japanese pilots found and exploited mercilessly. Ground forces had almost no effective anti-aircraft defense. The standard American half-track, the M2 and M3 models that formed the backbone of mechanized infantry, came equipped with a single .50 caliber M2 Browning machine gun. Excellent against infantry, decent against light vehicles, absolutely inadequate against aircraft moving at 200-300 miles per hour at altitudes between 100 and 2,000 feet. The numbers told a brutal story. Between January and June 1944, Japanese aircraft conducted over 2,400 ground attack sorties against American positions in the Philippines, New Guinea, and surrounding islands. These attacks killed an estimated 1,147 American servicemen and destroyed or damaged 412 vehicles, 67 landing craft, and countless tons of supplies. American anti-aircraft fire, primarily from rifle-caliber weapons and the occasional .50 cal, claimed just 23 confirmed kills, 23 aircraft, against 2,400 sorties. The math was simple and terrifying. For every Japanese plane shot down, roughly 80 American soldiers died and 18 vehicles were destroyed. Field commanders sent increasingly desperate reports to Pacific Command. Brigadier General William Chase, commanding the 38th Infantry Division, wrote in April 1944, "Our men are being murdered from the air with impunity. Standard armament insufficient for air defense. Request immediate solution or expect catastrophic losses during future operations." The problem wasn't just the .50 caliber's inadequacy. It was volume of fire, rate of fire, and effective sealing. A .50 cal machine gun fired 450 by 600 rounds per minute with an effective anti-aircraft range of maybe 1,500 feet. Against a Japanese Oscar traveling at 200 taimwai, that's 410 feet per second, a gunner had approximately 3.6 seconds to acquire, track, and hit a target. Nearly impossible. The U.S. Army had anti-aircraft solutions, of course. The M51 multiple gun motor carriage mounted quad 50 caliber guns on a half-track chassis. Better, but still insufficient against determined attacks. The M16 multiple gun motor carriage, also with quad 50 cals, entered service in May 1943. By September 1944, approximately 2,700 had been produced, but most went to European theaters. The Pacific received just 127 units by November 1944. 127 vehicles to protect tens of thousands of troops across thousands of miles. Meanwhile, the Japanese adapted. They'd learned that low-level attacks, hedge-hopping tactics below 300 feet, kept them under effective anti-aircraft fire while maximizing strafing accuracy. American gunners couldn't track fast enough, couldn't put enough lead in the air, couldn't create the wall of fire needed to deter or destroy attacking aircraft. Then someone in ordnance had an idea, a wild, potentially brilliant idea. The U.S. military had thousands of 50 caliber M2 aircraft machine guns in inventory. These weren't standard ground-based Brownings. These were AN M2 variants, aviation models, lighter, faster cycling. Rate of fire, 750-850 rounds per minute, nearly 40% faster than ground models. 4 of these guns, properly mounted, could throw 3,200 rounds per minute into the air. That was enough to create a genuine wall of lead. If you want to see how American ingenuity turned Japanese air superiority into a death sentence for any pilot brave or foolish enough to attack, hit that like button and subscribe. This story gets wild. Back to Bobby Milliken. The official designation was M16A1 Modified Air Defense Half-Track. The unofficial name, the one that spread through motor pools and infantry companies across the Pacific, Quad 50 Air. But the Japanese had their own name. Intelligence intercepts from January 1945 revealed Japanese pilots warning each other about Sora no Karyudo, Sky Hunter. Later intercepts used Shi no Hoki, Death's Sweep. By February 1945, the most common term appeared in dozens of communications, Sky Reaper. The conversion was mechanically straightforward, but operationally revolutionary. Engineers started with the standard M3 half-track chassis, a 20,000-pound armored personnel carrier, 20 feet 3 inches long, powered by a white 160AX 147 horsepower engine. They removed the standard ring mount .50 caliber machine gun. In its place, they installed a Maxson M45 quad mount turret, but with a critical modification. Instead of standard M2 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, they mounted 4 AN M2 aircraft machine guns. The difference was extraordinary. Each AN M2 weighed just 61 pounds compared to the 84-pound ground model. The reduced weight came from thinner barrel shrouds and modified receivers designed for aircraft installation where weight was critical. But the real advantage was the firing rate, 750, 850 rounds per minute per gun. 4 guns, 3,200 rounds per minute combined. That's 53 rounds per second. Picture this. In 1 second, this vehicle could put 53 half-inch diameter bullets into a cone of airspace roughly 30 feet wide at 1,000 yards. In 3 seconds, the time it took a Japanese Oscar to close from effective range to overhead, the Quad 50 Air could fire 160 rounds. That created a visible stream of tracers, a literal tunnel of fire that attacking pilots had to fly through. The ammunition load was equally impressive. Each gun fed from a 200-round ammunition box. Total ready ammunition, 800 rounds. That gave approximately 15 seconds of sustained fire before reload. Reload time, with a trained crew, 23 seconds per gun, but staggered so the vehicle never went completely silent. The turret could traverse 360 degrees in 2.8 seconds. It could elevate from 5 degrees, for ground targets, to 90 degrees, straight up, in 1.9 seconds. A hydraulic system, borrowed from M16 MGMC designs, assisted the gunner, making target tracking smooth even against fast-moving aircraft. Effective range against aircraft, 2,800 feet. Maximum range, 7,400 yards, though hitting anything beyond a mile was mostly luck and volume. The first prototype rolled out of the San Francisco Bay Ordnance Depot on August 3, 1944. Captain James Morton, the ordnance officer who supervised the conversion, later wrote, "We fired the first test pattern on August 5th. 4 200-round belts, full auto, against a towed target at 1,500 feet. We put 127 holes in a target 15 feet square. The sound was apocalyptic, like God's own chainsaw." By August 20th, 1944, the Army approved immediate field modification of existing M3 half-tracks. By September 15th, conversion teams had been dispatched to Manila, Hollandia, and Tacloban. Their orders: convert every available M3 half-track to the Quad 50 air configuration. Priority: absolute. The first combat-ready unit received their modified vehicles on October 2nd, 1944. The 503rd Anti-Aircraft Battalion, Provisional, took delivery of 12 Quad 50 air half-tracks at Tacloban Airfield, Leyte. They wouldn't wait long to use them. Bobby Milliken survived that first strafing run on December 7th. Barely. The Oscar's 12.7mm rounds chewed up the ground where he'd been standing 2 seconds earlier. His jammed .50 cal never fired a shot. 3 men in his squad took shrapnel. One, Private Eddie Holcomb, 19 years old, from Kentucky, died before the medic reached him. That night, Bobby's unit, Company C, 2nd Battalion, 32nd Infantry Regiment, received new orders. They were being pulled off the line, not for rest, for re-equipment. December 9th, 1944, 0630 hours, Tacloban Airfield. Bobby stands in front of his new vehicle. It's still an M3 half-track, same chassis, same engine. But the back looks like someone welded 4 aircraft machine guns to a rotating turret. The barrels are sleeker than standard .50 cals. The ammunition boxes are enormous. And there's a young corporal, Eddie Chen, 21, from San Francisco, grinning like he just got the keys to a sports car. "Sergeant Milliken," Chen says, "I'm your new gunner. They sent me from the 503rd Berea to train your crew. You're gonna love this thing." Bobby isn't sure. "Looks heavy. We gonna be able to move?" Chen laughs. "Oh, we'll move. But we're not running from Japs anymore. They run from us now." December 11th, 1944, 1420 hours, Ormoc Valley. Bobby's half-track is part of a column moving supplies toward the front line. 12 vehicles total. 3 of them are Quad 50 air conversions. The rest are standard transport. Chen sits in the turret, hands on the grips, eyes scanning the sky. He's been doing this for 2 hours. Bobby thinks the kid might actually be enjoying himself. 1427 hours. "Aircraft!" Chen shouts. "Southeast! Low! 4 contacts." Bobby grabs binoculars. 4 Ki 43 Oscars, coming in at maybe 250 feet, following the valley floor. Standard Japanese tactic. Stay low, hit fast, disappear before anyone can react. But Chen is already moving. The turret whines as it rotates. The 4 barrels elevate 15 degrees. Bobby can hear the kid muttering calculations. "Range 200, closure rate 3 seconds to effective." The first Oscar pulls up slightly to begin its attack run. The pilot probably expects 30 caliber rifle fire. Maybe a few 50 cal rounds if he's unlucky. Nothing that'll seriously threaten him. Chen opens fire at 1,800 feet The sound is indescribable. Not the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of a standard 50 cal. This is a continuous roar, like tearing canvas amplified 1,000 times. Bobby can see the tracers, every fifth round, creating 4 parallel lines of fire that converge on the Oscar. The effect is immediate and catastrophic. The Oscar's right wing disintegrates, not damaged, not holed, disintegrates. Bobby watches chunks of aluminum and fabric spin away as 53 rounds per second intersect with the aircraft's flight path. The Oscar rolls hard left, pilot desperately trying to evade, but Chen tracks him perfectly, the hydraulic traverse keeping the stream of fire locked on target. 2 seconds. 106 rounds fired. The Oscar's cockpit explodes. The canopy shatters. The aircraft noses into the ground at 280 and erupts in a fireball 40 feet high. Elapsed time from Chen opening fire to impact: 4.3 seconds. The other 3 Oscars scatter. They're pulling up, breaking formation, trying to gain altitude and reassess. But the other 2 Quad 50 air half-tracks in the column are already firing. The sky fills with tracers. The second Oscar tries to climb, makes it to 600 feet before a burst from Lieutenant Morrison's half-track catches it in the engine. The Sakai radial engine seizes. The prop stops. The aircraft becomes a brick, traveling 200 mph. It pancakes into a rice paddy 800 yards north. The third and fourth Oscars are running now, full throttle, weaving, trying to get range. Chen keeps firing. Bobby can see the kid's face, absolutely calm, tracking, adjusting for lead and deflection like he's done this 1,000 times. A stream of tracers reaches out, touches the third Oscar's tail. The tail section crumples. The Oscar goes into a flat spin. The pilot, Bobby can see him in the cockpit, wrestles with the controls. At 150 feet, there's no recovery. The Oscar augers into the jungle canopy and explodes. The fourth Oscar escapes, barely, trailing smoke. Its left stabilizer shot to pieces. Total engagement time, 31 seconds. 3 Japanese aircraft destroyed, 1 damaged. 0 American casualties. Chen secures his guns. He's shaking. Adrenaline and 4 seconds of sustained fire from 4 machine guns will do that. Bobby climbs up to the turret. How much ammo did you use? Chen checks the belts. Maybe 400 rounds total. Got another 400 ready to go. Bobby does the math. They just killed 3 enemy aircraft and used less than half their immediately available ammunition. Before, with a single 50 cal, they'd have fired everything they had and prayed for a lucky hit. That night, intelligence reports note unusual Japanese radio traffic. Pilots from the 22nd Sentai, the unit that lost 3 aircraft, are filing reports about a new American weapon. The phrase Sky Reaper appears for the first time in Signals Intelligence Intercepts, dated December 11, 1944. By December 20th, 1944, the Army had converted 89 M3 half-tracks to the Quad 50 air configuration across Pacific theaters. By January 15, 1945, 247 conversions. By March 1st, 531 conversions. The limiting factor wasn't chassis or turrets. It was the AN-M2 aircraft machine guns. The weapons were designed for aircraft, and aircraft production had priority. Every Quad 50 air conversion meant 4 fewer guns for bombers or fighters, but the results spoke for themselves. Between December 11, 1944, and February 28, 1945, Quad 50 air vehicles were credited with 387 confirmed aircraft kills. Probable kills, aircraft damaged and seen trailing smoke or losing altitude, numbered another 221. Total sorties flown by Japanese aircraft against positions defended by Quad 50 air units, 1,273. Loss rate, 20.7% confirmed, 32.4% including probables. Compare that to the earlier rate, 23 kills against 2,400 sorties, less than 1%. The Japanese noticed, they noticed immediately. Intercepted communications from January 1945 showed Japanese air commanders explicitly ordering pilots to avoid areas defended by American automatic anti-aircraft vehicles. Flight leaders reported that American positions were too heavily defended for effective ground attack. One intercept from February 3, 1945, translated from a Japanese pilot's report, encountered Sky Reaper units south of Manila. 4 aircraft lost in 30 seconds. Recommend no further low-level operations this sector. The Americans have created a wall of fire we cannot penetrate. But the Quad 50 Air's impact went beyond simple kill ratios. The psychological effect was enormous. Japanese pilots who'd grown accustomed to strafing runs with minimal opposition now faced withering, accurate fire from multiple vehicles simultaneously. Attack runs that once took 8 to 10 seconds now required altitude changes, evasive maneuvers, and often resulted in aborted attacks. Ground commanders reported significant decreases in successful Japanese air attacks. Major General Vern Mudge, commanding the 1st Cavalry Division, wrote on January 28, 1945, "Introduction of Quad 50 air platforms has reduced effective enemy air attacks by approximately 75%. Enemy aircraft still appear, but rarely press attacks. Our casualties from air action have dropped from 40-50 per week to fewer than 10. The vehicles themselves proved remarkably versatile. While designed for anti-aircraft work, crews quickly discovered the Quad 50 Air's effectiveness against ground targets. At 3,200 rounds per minute, the concentrated fire could demolish buildings, suppress pillboxes, and absolutely shred light vehicles. During the Battle of Manila in February 1945, Quad 50 air vehicles were used to clear Japanese positions from fortified buildings. Sergeant William Blake's vehicle expended 2,400 rounds in 3 minutes, reducing a 2-story concrete structure to rubble, and killing an estimated 30 to 40 Japanese soldiers inside. Logistics became the primary challenge. Each vehicle required 800 rounds of 50 rounds caliber ammunition just to fill its ready boxes. A typical engagement used 400 to 600 rounds. Ammunition resupply became a constant operation. The 503rd 8AA Battalion reported that their 12 Quad 50 air vehicles consumed 47,000 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition in January 1945 alone, nearly 4,000 rounds per vehicle per month. Maintenance proved intensive. The AN-M2 guns weren't designed for sustained ground use. Barrels overheated faster than standard M2 Brownings. After 800 1,000 rounds, barrels needed replacement. The 32nd Infantry Regiment's maintenance logs show they went through 73 replacement barrels between December 1944 and March 1945 for just 8 vehicles. But crews adapted. They learned to fire in 3 to 5 second bursts rather than sustained streams. They rotated guns during extended engagements, letting one cool while firing the other 3. They kept spare barrels in the vehicle and could swap them in under 4 minutes. The AN-M2 aircraft machine gun was fundamentally different from its ground-based cousin, and understanding those differences explained both the Quad 50 Air's effectiveness and its limitations. The standard M2 Browning machine gun used a closed-bolt firing system and heavy barrel designed for sustained fire. The AN-M2 used an open-bolt system and thinner barrel to save weight. This increased rate of fire from 450 to 600 rounds per minute to 750, 850 rounds per minute, but generated more heat per round fired. The metallurgy was identical. Both used chrome molybdenum steel, but barrel thickness differed significantly. The M2 ground gun barrel was 0.81 inches thick at the chamber. The AN M2 was 0.64 inches thick. That 0.17-inch difference saved 23 pounds per gun, but meant heat dissipation was roughly 30% less efficient. Gunners had to understand barrel temperature. After 200 rounds of continuous fire, an AN M2 barrel reached approximately 600 degrees Fahrenheit. At 400 rounds, 900 degrees. At 600 rounds, 100 degrees. And rising into danger territory. Above 200 degrees, the barrel could warp, causing accuracy degradation and potential catastrophic failure. Eddie Chen, now promoted to sergeant and training other gunners, developed a technique he called cyclic rotation. Fire guns 1 and 2 for 3 seconds. Cease fire. Immediately fire guns 3 and 4 for 3 seconds. Cease fire. Repeat. This allowed continuous fire while giving each barrel 6 seconds to cool between bursts. Effective temperature management while maintaining suppressive fire. The hydraulic traverse system was borrowed from the M16 MGMC, but modified for the increased weight of 4 aircraft guns plus ammunition. The hydraulic pump ran off the half-trax engine through a power takeoff system, generating 200 psi of pressure. This allowed the turret to rotate 360 degrees in 2.8 seconds, even with 800 pounds of guns and ammunition. Targeting was surprisingly sophisticated. The gunner used a modified Mark 9 reflector sight, the same sight used in P-51 Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts. It projected a lighted reticle onto a glass plate. The reticle had range rings calibrated for aircraft speeds from 150 to 350 mm. The gunner estimated target speed, selected the appropriate ring, and led the target accordingly. In practice, most engagements occurred at ranges under 2,000 feet, where lead calculations were simpler. The high volume of fire meant even imperfect accuracy could achieve hits. As Corporal Martinez from the 38th Infantry Division put it, "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to put enough bullets in the air that the target flies into some of them." Ammunition types varied by mission. Standard ball ammunition for most anti-aircraft work. Armor-piercing incendiary, API, for hardened targets. Tracer rounds, every 5th round, for target tracking and psychological effect. The tracers were particularly important at night, creating visible streams of fire that helped gunners adjust their aim and terrified enemy pilots. The vehicle's weaknesses were significant. The M3 half-track chassis wasn't designed to support the weight and recoil of 4 synchronized machine guns firing simultaneously. The suspension, a combination of tracks and front wheels, took enormous stress. Maintenance logs from March 1945 show suspension repairs were required every 180-200 miles of operation, compared to 400 to 500 miles for standard M3 half-tracks. The armor was minimal. The M3 had 60 to 12 mm of armor plate, enough to stop small arms fire, but useless against anything heavier. A direct hit from a 20 mm cannon, standard armament on Japanese fighters, would penetrate easily. The vehicles relied on mobility and firepower, not protection. Crew vulnerability was extreme. The gunner sat in an open turret, completely exposed above the waist. During engagements, he was the most visible target on the battlefield. Between December 1944 and April 1945, 47 Quad 50 air gunners were killed in action, the highest casualty rate of any crew position in mechanized units. Range limitations also mattered. The effective ceiling of 2,800 feet meant Japanese pilots could attack from higher altitudes with impunity. Dive bombing from 6,000 feet kept aircraft above the Quad 50 Air's effective range until the last seconds of the attack run. Smart Japanese pilots adapted, though many still made the fatal mistake of low-level approaches. The Japanese developed specific tactics to counter the Quad 50 air. Intelligence reports from March 1945 described Japanese pilots using pop-up attacks, approaching at extremely low altitude, under 50 feet, then pulling up sharply to attack from higher angles. This minimized time in the Quad 50 air's effective engagement zone. Other tactics included simultaneous attacks from multiple directions, forcing the vehicles to choose targets and potentially allowing some aircraft through the defensive fire. Night attacks became more common, though the tracers made the Quad 50 airs effective even in darkness. The Americans countered with improved deployment strategies. Vehicles were positioned in mutually supporting positions, creating overlapping fields of fire. Typical deployment: 3 Quad 50 air vehicles in a triangle formation 300 yards apart, covering a 1,200-yard perimeter. Any aircraft attacking had to fly through fire from at least 2 vehicles simultaneously. Production of the Quad 50 air conversions officially ended on August 15, 1945, the day Japan announced surrender. Total conversions completed: 782 vehicles across all Pacific theaters. After the war, the vehicles faced an uncertain future. The Army had no peacetime requirement for mobile anti-aircraft platforms with this specific configuration. By November 1945, most Quad 50 air vehicles were being reconverted to standard M3 half-tracks, or scrapped entirely. The AN M2 guns were desperately needed elsewhere. Post-war aircraft production continued, and the guns were removed from half-tracks and returned to aviation depots. By February 1946, only 23 Quad 50 air vehicles remained in active service, all assigned to occupation forces in Japan. But the concept didn't die. The Korean War saw renewed interest in mobile anti-aircraft platforms. The M16 MGMC, with its Quad 50 caliber guns, proved highly effective against North Korean aircraft and ground targets. But the M16 used standard M2 Brownings, not the higher rate AN M2 aircraft guns. Rate of fire, 2,300 rounds per minute combined, compared to the Quad 50 Air's 3,200 rounds per minute. The Vietnam War brought another evolution. The M163 Vulcan air defense system mounted a 20mm M61 Vulcan cannon, rate of fire 3,000 rounds per minute, on an M113 armored personnel carrier. Conceptually, it was the Quad 50 Air's spiritual successor: mobile platform, high rate of fire, anti-aircraft capability, with devastating ground support potential. Modern equivalents exist today. The M6 Linebacker mounts Stinger, missiles, and a 25mm autocannon on a Bradley chassis. The Russian ZSU-23-4 Shilka uses quad 23mm autocannons. All trace their conceptual lineage to the same idea: put overwhelming firepower on a mobile platform to create area denial against aircraft. The Quad 50 Air's specific legacy remained largely classified until 1973. Documents detailing the conversion program, combat effectiveness, and tactical employment were declassified gradually between 1973 and 1982. Even then, the story remained obscure, overshadowed by more famous weapons systems buried in technical reports that few outside military historians ever read. The vehicles themselves, most were scrapped by 1947. A handful survived as museum pieces. The National Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas, has one restored Quad 50 air vehicle on display. The Smithsonian's storage facility at Silver Hill, Maryland, has components from another. That's it. From 782 conversions, 2 partial survivors. The nickname Sky Reaper, the Japanese term that struck fear into pilots across the Pacific, faded from memory. English-language historical accounts rarely mentioned it. The Japanese term shinohoki appeared in post-war pilot memoirs, but without context, without explanation of what the weapon actually was. It wasn't until 2008 that researcher Dr. Margaret Chin published Anti-Aircraft Innovations in the Pacific Theater, finally bringing the Quad 50 Air's story to broader academic attention. Even then, it remained largely unknown outside specialist circles. Staff Sergeant Robert Mackenzie survived the war. He returned to Oregon in November 1945, married his high school sweetheart Clara in February 1946, and worked as a machinist for 43 years. He rarely spoke about the war. When he did, he talked about the Quad 50 Air. "That vehicle saved my life," he told his grandson in 1989. "Probably saved it a dozen times. Before we got it, we were sitting ducks. After, the Japanese were afraid of us. You could see it. They'd start their attack run, see the tracers coming up, and just break off. They knew that thing would tear them apart." Eddie Chen, the gunner who got the first kill on December 11, 1944, received the Silver Star for actions in February 1945 when his vehicle shot down 6 Japanese aircraft in one day near Manila. He survived the war, attended UC Berkeley on the GI Bill, became an aerospace engineer, and worked on the F-4 Phantom's fire control systems. He died in 2003. His obituary mentioned his wartime service, but not the Quad 50 Air specifically. The records remained classified. Chen couldn't tell anyone what he'd actually done, what he'd built, what he'd accomplished. Corporal William Blake, the gunner who demolished a building in Manila, wasn't as fortunate. He was killed on April 12, 1945, when his vehicle took a direct hit from a 75 mm artillery shell during the Battle of Mindanao. He was 22 years old. His mother received a telegram stating he died in action. She never knew about the Quad 50 Air, never knew her son had pioneered tactics that saved hundreds of lives. The 503rd Dirty Badarwiyere Battalion was deactivated in December 1945. The men scattered. Most never saw another Quad 50 Air after the war. The vehicles that saved their lives, that changed tactical doctrine, that put fear into Japanese pilots, disappeared. But veterans remembered. In reunions throughout the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, Pacific Theater veterans who'd served with or been protected by Quad 50 Air units shared stories. Oral histories collected by the Library of Congress contain dozens of references. An old soldier's voice on tape. "Those half-tracks with the 4 aircraft guns. Best damn thing we had." When the vehicles were finally declassified in the early 1980s, Bobby Mackenzie was 62 years old. He read the released documents with tears in his eyes. For 37 years, he'd been unable to fully explain what saved his life. Now, finally, he could. P.O. wrote a letter to the Army's Historical Division. It's in the archives now. In it, he wrote, "To whoever reads this, that vehicle, that gun system, those men who operated it, they deserve to be remembered. We couldn't talk about it for decades. Now we can. Please don't let it be forgotten. It mattered. It saved lives. It changed how we fought." 782 vehicles, 387 confirmed kills, hundreds, maybe thousands of lives saved because someone had the idea to put aircraft guns on a half-track chassis, and crews had the courage to operate them under fire. If this story moved you, if you believe these innovations and the people behind them deserve to be remembered, hit that like button. Subscribe and ring the notification bell because we bring you stories like this every week, the forgotten weapons, tactics, and heroes that changed history. Drop a comment and let us know. Are you from Oregon, like Bobby Mackenzie? California, like Eddie Chen? Did your family serve in the Pacific Theater? We read every comment, and your stories matter. These men, these gunners, drivers, engineers, and infantry, they fought with what they had, adapted when it wasn't enough, and created solutions that saved their brothers in arms. The Quad 50 Air wasn't the most famous weapon of World War II, but for the men it protected, for the pilots it stopped, for the battles it influenced, it was everything. They called it Sky Reaper. We call it American ingenuity in the face of desperation. Either way, it's a story that deserves to be told.